In this video, I'm going to give you 3 simple tips to help you ace every virtual presentation that you deliver from here on in. Let's face it, virtual presentations are here to stay. Through the COVID pandemic, organizations realized that doing things virtually actually is a very efficient way of getting things done. It saves time. Firstly, virtual presentations, virtual meetings are really easy to schedule. Just a click of a button and a global invite gets sent out. Strangely, virtual presentations and meetings actually seem to be shorter. You seem to be able to get things done more quickly than you do in the equivalent face-to-face meetings. Not sure why that would be the case. Probably because you tend to have a more focused agenda going into the virtual meeting, and also people often have back-to-back meetings, so you've just got to get things finished. There's no time wandering through a corridor from one meeting to another, grabbing a coffee along the way. Often things are just done more quickly, back to back. And of course, virtual meetings, virtual presentations, they save a lot in terms of costs. Costs, financial costs, there's no travel costs involved, but also other costs, environmental costs. We're not polluting the planet traveling from one place to another. So I think there's no doubt that delivering virtual presentations, virtual meetings are very efficient ways of doing things. But are they necessarily as effective as face-to-face meetings and presentations? I think in some cases, people still would prefer face-to-face presentations. So for example, where there's perhaps a very contentious issue and you've just got to sit down and see the eyeballs of people. So there may be cases where face-to-face will never be substituted. Having said that, I think they are more the exceptions than the rule. For the vast majority of presentations and meetings, I think doing things virtually is absolutely fine. In some cases, even better than doing things face-to-face. But only better if they're done in the correct way. Certainly, so many of the virtual meetings and presentations that I've been involved in, and I'm sure you would relate to this, they are dire, absolutely dire. So dull, so boring. All you want to do is switch off. And of course, that's what most people do. They are there, sort of, but not really. They're doing other things. They're doing their emails, doing 101 other things. So, how can you be more impactful when you're delivering your next virtual presentation? What I'd like to do is to show you 2 videos where I'm presenting a single-slided presentation. And the data on the slide is from some research conducted by the University of St. Gallen along with Novo Office and HR Campus over in Switzerland. Now what they did was they contacted 841 companies in Switzerland and asked them what their key challenges were transitioning from the traditional way of doing work over to what they call the hybrid work model. Some people working from home, some people going into the office. So let's have a look at these 2 videos and let's see what we can learn from the difference between the 2. 89% of the companies cited keeping up and fostering corporate culture as one of the key challenges they face. 71% cited collaborate effectively within teams. 68% managed remote teams. 61 said uplift in IT security, and 60% said ensure mental health. And finally, 45% said maintain high productivity. Okay, so that was video 1. Of course, I've exaggerated a little bit, but really it's not far off many of the virtual presentations that I've been involved in. And I'm sure you've been involved in some of these too. Let's have a look at video 2. By far the most cited key challenge was that of keeping up and fostering the corporate culture. 89% of companies cited this as a key challenge. The next 4 key challenges are the ones that you would expect companies to have cited as part of this transition. So namely, collaborating effectively with teams, managing remote teams, uplifting IT security, ensuring mental health. The majority of companies cited these challenges as key challenges. The one that was perhaps really surprising was maintaining high productivity. I think pre-COVID, most people would have expected this to be cited by more companies, the vast majority of companies at least. But actually, less than half of the companies cited maintaining high productivity as a key challenge that they faced. So hopefully you could see the difference between video 1 and video 2. I promised you that I'd give you 3 simple tips that will help you to ace every virtual presentation that you'll deliver from here on in. So here they are. Tip number 1, get the camera positioning correct. And by camera positioning, I mean the angle that the camera is with regards to your eye line. The best positioning would be if the camera was level with your eyes. Now sometimes this isn't practical. Sometimes you have to place your laptop down on a desk. Well, there are some desk stands that one can buy, and I would strongly recommend that you do this. Try to get that camera level as close to your eyes as possible. The second thing that you have to think about also is how far away you're sitting from the camera. My preference is to sit a little bit further back from the camera so that you can see what I'm doing as I'm talking. So get the angle right, get the distance between you and the camera right. The final thing to think about in terms of camera positioning is the lighting behind you. Think very carefully about whether you're coming across nice and clearly or whether there's a lot of light behind you and therefore you're coming across in more of a silhouette. Tip number 2. Probably the most effective thing you can do when you're delivering a presentation virtually is to look directly into the camera lens as you're talking. Now this is challenging, and I know it's challenging because it's so unnatural, especially when you have other people's videos on the screen. It's so tempting to be looking down at their videos as you're delivering your presentation. Not just at their videos, but also at your slide if you've got it on your screen as well. Try to overcome this temptation. By all means, look at people's videos from time to time just to make sure that they're still with you, to see their reactions to what you're saying as well. From time to time, it's absolutely okay. Look down at your slide, just remind yourself of what you want to say, but try as much as possible when you're talking to look directly into the camera lens. It gives the impression to your audience that you're really talking to them and really helps develop that connection, which is so important in a virtual presentation. Tip number 3. Bring your presentation to life with some energy. Now, what you really want here is a contrast. So a contrast between what? Well, on the one hand, you want to come across as someone who's composed and in control of him or herself. You want to contrast that composure with enthusiasm. How can I project enthusiasm as I'm talking to you? Well, facial expressions. My face should be alive as I'm talking to you. Gestures. I'm using my arms, my hands to emphasize, to support what I'm saying. Through my voice, I'm using things like intonation. I'm placing emphasis on the key points that I really want to stress as I'm talking to you. So what you really want to achieve is a nice balance between, on the one hand, that composure, and then on the other hand, that enthusiasm, which is so contagious to people when a presenter comes across with enthusiasm. The audience almost can't help themselves but become enthused as well. So there you are, my 3 tips to ace every virtual presentation that you deliver from here on in. Tip number 1, get the camera angle right. So the angle, the distance you are from the camera, the lighting behind you. Also think about whether you need to have an artificial background or a diffuse background. If your background is fine, then that's not necessary. Tip number 2, look directly into the camera as much as you can whenever you're talking. And tip number 3, get the balance right between coming across as someone who's very composed versus coming across as someone who has a lot of enthusiasm for what he or she is communicating to the audience. Now, these things, although they sound very simple, in reality, they're not that easy to get used to. So the key really is to make these things habits. So make these behaviors, for example, looking directly into the camera when you're talking, make this a habit so that you no longer even think about what you're doing. The best way to achieve this, to create a habit out of something like looking into the camera, is to record yourself. And this is so easy to do with the technology now. So do a few dry runs before the virtual presentation itself. So get up, whatever you're using, whether it's Teams, Zoom, WebEx, get the platform up, press that record button, do a few dry runs, watch yourself back, force yourself, because a lot of people don't like seeing themselves back on video, but force yourself to do this. And then put yourself in the shoes of the audience and ask yourself, how am I coming across? What impression am I giving to people as they're watching me present? And then start adjusting your behavior and give it another go. Adjust your behavior further, give it another go. A final tip that I have for you is, and this won't be relevant for all of you, but for some of you it might be, get yourself a good communications coach, someone who can help you through the process of turning these behaviors into habits. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you found it useful, please feel free to share the link with other people and spread the word.